Thanks for giving us a couple minutes. We appreciate it. We know you're really, really busy.
It's great to be back again. Thanks, JT.
Well, thank you. Now, first, let's start off by talking about something that last hour was a real hot-button issue here, and it seems to be a hot-button issue across the country. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was, of course, the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, and on Friday, the Obama administration announced that he's going to be tried in a civilian court instead of by a military tribunal. And you are totally behind that, correct?
I am behind that. Why is I was stationed at the Pentagon when 9/11 happened. I then took over the Navy's anti-terrorism unit. I helped shape the policies to pursue those that did those outrageous acts at the Pentagon in Pennsylvania and up in New York City. I was on the ground in Afghanistan early in that war as head of the Navy's anti-terrorism unit, and then came out, took command of a carrier battle group, and did strikes into Afghanistan against them. I am a large believer that these men, these murderers, have to be brought to justice. And for too many years, they've just been sitting there. And we have the evidence, or we would not be having this to come forward, to show the strength of the ideals that I defended, that we are a nation of laws, not of men, and to throw those keys away, or capital punishment, and have our court system throw them where they belong. And I'm a strong believer that we've waited too long, as the Supreme Court has twice said that our tribunals, our military commissions, were not constituted properly in order to bring them to justice. We tried to fix this again in my committee and passed it, but it hasn't been put through the test yet. And so I want this justice brought now.
Congressman, we also have Bill Mason in the studio with us. He is the general manager of the station, but I know he feels very strongly about this as well, and he has a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Congressman.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Good to be back with you.
As a retired admiral, do you believe, by and large, that military tribunals provide fair trials that yield just verdicts?
I think that the military tribunals have in the past, the Nuremberg trials, have yielded fair verdicts.
And, I mean, even more recently, there's military tribunals that happen, on a probably weekly, monthly basis with different issues.
Actually, that's not so. It's rare that we have military tribunals. You're talking about the Uniform Code of Military Justice court-martials.
Correct.
Totally different.
Okay.
Totally different.
Okay, now, but with military tribunals, here's the question. Is it wise to set, in the history of the United States, non-uniform combatants, i.e. terrorists, have always been subject to military tribunals and not to being tried in civilian court? We do this. Does this now not set a precedent that every non-uniformed combatant can demand and have to be granted a civilian trial?
No, absolutely not. Well, look, we've done 200 of them in the past 8 years.
Right.
200 terrorists have been tried in our civilian courts. Moussaoui, who was part of this hijacking, was part of our civilian courts. This is the way we've handled these murderers, because they were here in our homeland and struck us. Now, the ones that were over there and went against the USS ship Cole in Yemen, they're going before a tribunal. I just hope the tribunal is able to stand the oversight once again of the Supreme Court. But we've done 200 of these terrorists since the global war of terror began in our civilian system.
Well, here's with Moussaoui, he was arrested on U.S. ground, and he was given his Miranda rights and accorded all of the procedures necessary under United States law. If my understanding is correct, Sheikh Mohammed was not given his Miranda rights when he was arrested in Pakistan, or there's a real question as to what evidence is going to be able to even be brought in civilian court. And the other concern is this is going to turn into a circus and a recruiting tool for al-Qaeda. We've always said Gitmo is terrible because it's a recruiting tool for al-Qaeda. If Sheikh Mohammed gets to get up and rant and rave for month after month in civilian court and about waterboarding and about torture and about George Bush and about Barack Obama and about the CIA, won't that be an even bigger recruiting tool for al-Qaeda and put our soldiers and our country at more risk?
Well, first off, as you know, in the Nuremberg trial, military tribunals are public also.
Right.
And so they'll be able to do the same there. Number two is the fact that the administration would not be bringing this forward if it didn't have conclusive evidence to have them have their due justice, because there is, and the administration has said this, over 20 individuals there that they don't feel they have enough evidence to bring forward to either a military tribunal or to a court of law in the civilian world, and they have said we're not going to bring them forward, and they're too dangerous to release. So they're in limbo right now till they figure out what to do with them. They've already said that. And so the fact that they are going to take someone forward into a Supreme Court means that probably through, and they haven't said this yet, other intelligence means we have the ability to prosecute them. And third, as you probably well know, in the Quarles Act, it made it a court decision. It made it very clear about Miranda rights that they are secondary to public safety issues. And so in Quarles, even though Miranda rights weren't read, it was a public safety issue. And if there's ever a public safety issue, it's this. And I don't believe Miranda rights at all is going to come up in this, because I have no doubt that they're bringing this forward because of their ability to have had intelligence by other means.
Well, even any evidence that was gained by waterboarding or any confessions, are they going to be allowed as evidence?
They're not allowed in military tribunals either. The Supreme Court has dictated that those that are brought forward by either hearsay or by torture are not admissible either in military tribunals. That's why they kept getting slammed back to the military commissions, nor in civilian court and all. And so torture is not acceptable in either cases for it. And look, here's things I understand, Bill, how people have different opinions, and this is why, I feel very strongly I owe it a duty to come forward clearly, as my opponent in the Senate has even spoken up about this, and yet it's been days since then. He's on the Judiciary Committee and hasn't even taken a position. I want you to know that I am speaking from a way that I was down there on the ground. I can remember when some of the soldiers brought in some of these detainees in Afghanistan. I remember watching one of them banging his head against the stockade we put him behind. And I said to the soldier, what's with this one? He says, we paid $2,000 for these guys as a bounty, as you know. And the tribal chiefs just give us, the people, like this fellow's mentally deranged. Over 600 of these individuals we brought in that the tribal chiefs just, give their local guy they didn't like $2,000. He's a Taliban. He's an Al-Qaeda. And we took him to Gitmo. We've had a release about that many because we found out later on that, these guys were just swept up in bounty hunting. Now, my point of this is that I believe so strongly that what defines America is no man can throw someone else in a black hole like a third-rate country does. That ultimately our laws are so good and just that we will prevail in there. It is what this nation is founded upon, justice, and I believe that very strongly. And they have said we're going to keep 20 or some people down there until we can figure out how to get the evidence before we even think of bringing them forward. And I believe that they wouldn't be bringing them forward unless we had it. And what a sign of our resolve. We should never let terrorists force us to abandon our principles that we're a nation of laws, not of men.
Well, here's my question. So the bottom line is you don't believe that terrorists can get a just trial in a military tribunal?
No, I didn't say that at all. The ones who attacked the USS Call in Yemen are going to be brought before a tribunal, the administration announced.
Well,
I didn't say that at all.
Why can't, if it's going to be if it would be an open court in a military tribunal, which, and I'm not saying that you can trust this or believe it, obviously, but Muhammad has supposedly said if he goes before a military tribunal, he's going to plead guilty, take his penalty, which will most likely be death, and that's the end of it. If he can get a just trial in a military tribunal, and that's the system that we have used consistently for enemy combatants that we have arrested not in U.S. soil, why can't we just do it now? What's the difference?
I hate to say this, Bill, but your statement is not correct. We've had 200 terrorists that we have brought before the civilian court system.
Well, according
it's
to
the normal way we do things.
Well, according to Attorney General Holder yesterday, when he was asked by Senator Graham to cite one case, he couldn't cite any.
I can send you the 200.
Okay. I mean, I believe you, Congressman. I don't understand why our Attorney General, if that's the case, why didn't our Attorney General know that?
Are you sure that's what he was asked?
Yeah, he was. That's exactly what he was asked by Senator Graham yesterday.
I saw bits and pieces of his testimony, and
we actually have. We can play it for you if you like.
I'll email this to you if that's acceptable.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and Congressman, I have to give you great credit because you're a man of conviction, and you come on and you don't equivocate, and I have tremendous respect for you for that. We value you coming on, but I enjoy I think it shines a light for our listeners, the give and take back and forth.
Without a question, Bill, and that's what we are. We have laws that have freedom of speech to go back and forth, but I also don't want to shy back. I believe if there's anything in Washington, D.C. that's wrong, it's the failure to be accountable in your leadership. Everybody wants to be responsible. They don't want to be held accountable. I want people to understand that you may disagree with me, but you need to know where I'm sitting on an issue. I'm not going to do what our inspector says and sit off to the side and not make a single comment upon this, because people should understand where they're people who work for them. I work for my district. I work for 700,000 people where I stand on this issue. But I want you to know I came through it through looking at the court cases. I walked through this thing. You know, these military tribunals, unfortunately, the Supreme Court twice threw them as wrongly constituted. I'm a little wary, quite frankly, if we're going to be successful going a third time to it with the ones from Yemen, because I want these murderers to get their capital punishment, what they deserve, or throw away whatever the court says and move on, because I strongly believe that everywhere I went in around the world, we were respected for the power of our military, but we were admired because of our ideals, and that's what we fought for, and that's why I'm strong on this one. But I'm getting letters in, and I'm responding to them to let them know where I sit, Bill, okay?
Sure. And can I one other question?
Yeah, absolutely.
The cost of this may end up being in the tens of millions of dollars or more. Should the federal government in this case compensate New York City or New York State for all the money they're going to have to expend on extra security during the course of these trials? Because, I mean, they're a city, like many, on the verge of bankruptcy.
Well, you know, I think that's a decent recommendation. You know how we're sitting here, right, in Pennsylvania, right, with that horrid budget fight for the establishment in Harrisburg, and Washington, but I would be supportive of that, because these states and cities are really going through tough times, and quite frankly, this is part, law enforcement, first responders, military. Look, this global war on terror takes all elements of our power, and so therefore we shouldn't be laying undue burden upon a municipality or like New York City on it. So.
Well, Congressman, I know that you don't have very much more time, so we didn't get a chance to talk about health care, but hopefully we can have you back on real soon to talk about that, because we do have some questions regarding that. But, Joe, I want to thank you for coming back on the show, and hopefully, like I said, we can talk to you again real soon.
Listen, to both of you, thank you for the opportunity, and I would love to come back. I mean, I owe it to make sure people know what I'm doing. And I want you to know, when people write in, I read the letters. And, Bill, I've had numbers of them rolling in, and I've read them all. Matter of fact, there was a number of vets who I so respect who did, and I personally hand-wrote out this morning a letter that I want to send to them about this issue. So maybe that's why I'm a little focused on it.
No, that's fine. And, Congressman, I want to give you great credit once again for coming on and speaking your convictions. To be perfectly honest with you, your primary opponent has been invited numerous times to the station on different shows. He has not chosen to appear. You have been responsive whenever we've asked you to come on, and I think that is to your great credit.
Thanks very much. And again, as I conclude, I would not have served those years in the military if I didn't feel that these murderers shouldn't be brought and the keys thrown away or capital punishment, because it was outrageous. I lost friends. I had people who had worked for me. I just had switched my job in the Pentagon, and where I had been was literally about 30 yards away, and there, but for the grace of God, and the men I had left behind in the old office, we lost about 13 of them, and if I hadn't transitioned to another branch. So this is important to me that they're brought to justice. So thank you very much, all right?
Congressman, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
That's Congressman Joe Sestak.